Stephen A., tell me this. Do you feel like the Celtics can win the title if Porzingis isn't 100%?
I don't think they can win the title without him. I'm not saying he has to be 100%, but he's got to be up there. He's got to be above 75%, I think, in order for them to beat the Dallas Mavericks team that we've seen in these playoffs. This was the regular season. Excuse me. If this is regular season coming into the postseason, we would think a little bit differently. Based on what we've seen, it's not just about the greatness and the leadership of Kyrie Irving, the obvious greatness of Luka. It's about Gafford. It's about Lively. It's about P.J. Washington and, dare I say, even Derek Jones, that I didn't know could shoot threes until this year, okay? He's hitting threes now. And so when you look at the way the Dallas Mavericks are playing, how in sync they are with one another, you definitely need, and again, we wouldn't be feeling this way if this were before the trading deadline, before they got Gafford. But to have that size to go along with Lively is a huge, huge deal. The 37, 38-year-old Al Horford ain't going to be enough to offset that. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they can ball. They're stars in this league. But the rough riders that you need to be somebody on your front line, that's not necessarily in their repertoire. So I look at it from that standpoint and say that elevates the significance of a Porzingis. He is annoying me with those damn smirks. And you know what? That's Kristaps Porzingis. That's reserved for dudes who've been here before. You know what I'm saying? LeBron's acting like that or whatever. I'm good with it. He's a champion. And he's been to numerous 10 NBA finals, okay? You're behind. This is new to you. You're a newbie, okay? You were with the Knicks. It ain't happened there. Don't get me started on how things worked out in Dallas. You meant nothing in Washington, even though you had good numbers, because it was basketball purgatory in the nation's capital, okay? This is the first time you're on a stage where you're actually relevant. And that's the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. And you giving that smirk and don't want to give answers, whatever. Your behind better be ready. I tell you that much. Because a championship is at stake for the Boston Celtics. I understand that might be new to Kristaps Porzingis, but rather than smiling, he needs to be locked in, zero focus, and making sure he's doing everything he can to be ready, because the Boston Celtics need him in order to beat the Dallas Mavericks. Without him, at less than 80%, you ain't winning. You ain't beat Dallas.
Yeah, I disagree with that, Steve. I really do. I think Porzingis would make it easier for him, and I like to see him play too. I mean, this is his fourth team. You know, Jerry West played with 2 broken thumbs. Wilt played with the torn ACL in the playoffs. Bird had concussions. He's out there. You go out there and you got to give it a go here. I mean, at least OG did and Hart did in Game 7. So I like to see him play, but I'm not ready to go as far as Steve says that he's the difference maker. They have excellent guards. One of them, Holiday, is going to handle Irving, make it difficult for him. Tatum should be the second best player in this series after Luka. You got Brown, who's an excellent player. Horford's a good player. Pritchard, they got home court. I understand Dallas had a tougher run in the West than they did, but the Celtics are a solid favorite in this series with or without Porzingis, and I think that's fair. So I think Steve is wrong. I don't think I make it easier. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he wouldn't help him. But to say that they can't beat the Dallas Mavericks without Porzingis is a little strong.
It's a little aggressive.
That's a little aggressive.
Yeah. You know, the Celtics might agree with him, because if you go back 12 months after Boston got
Pause for a second. Might agree with who?
You, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Edwards.
make it
Thank you.
Go ahead. I just want to make sure they know.
I don't necessarily.
Hold on, Stephen A.
I don't necessarily
How many
agree
times have
with
the
you.
Mavs beat the Celtics?
Excuse me?
How many times have the Mavs beat the Celtics?
2-0 in the regular season?
Yeah.
Is this the finals or the regular season?
Well, I'm just
sorry,
wondering,
you do know the difference.
When Kyrie's gone against Boston, I'm just wondering.
Between regular season and the finals,
10
right?
straight losses.
Fine.
10 straight losses.
Who cares?
Last one, the
When was the
2021
NBA
playoffs.
finals? When was the NBA
Okay,
finals?
I'm just saying. I just want to make sure you knew the record.
By the way,
Yeah.
where was Kyrie Irving doing 8 of those losses?
I'm not sure.
I think Kyrie's lost like 10 in a row to Boston.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's what it was.
Okay.
All right. So
Durant.
last June, when the Celtics got eliminated by the Heat, they made Porzingis their number 1A offseason priority. He had an option that he had to pick up before he got traded. They had a 3-team trade worked out with LA. It fell apart, and they had like 12 hours to put together another 3-team trade, and they scrambled because their number 1 priority was to get Porzingis, because they knew how important it is to have that kind of weapon was. And not just in a series against a team like Dallas, but particularly against a team like Dallas that has great centers. One of the things that he does so well, he shoots 3-pointers from the top of the key. I know that sounds like a basic thing. He doesn't just corner shoot. He shoots 3-pointers from the top of the key. They run pick and rolls with him at the top of the key. That means if you're going to guard him, you got to be 20 to 23 feet from the basket. That means those two centers in Dallas who love to protect that rim have to come out. Otherwise, they're handing him a free shot. Honestly, I think this team's better at lobs because Doncic is so incredible at throwing them. You're 7'3". He's not going to totally shut off the lobs. So I would say this. I think just having him on the court is a huge difference maker. I kind of agree with you too, though, Dog, because even if he's not 100%, I still think he can make a big difference. I don't think he has to be 100%, but he's super duper important. The Holiday trade was a bonus. That wasn't the primary focus of what the Celtics thought they needed. They thought to win a series like this, they needed Porzingis, and that's why he's got to be out there and he's got to be a factor. I don't know if he's got to average 20 and 15, but he's got to be a factor.
Well, here's the deal. A couple of things. I'm glad you brought that up because that's the point that I wanted to make. Of course, that's one of the other reasons he's important, Doggy, because you pull Lively and Gafford away from the basket defensively, okay? Not to mention the fact that he's there to try to avoid some of those lobs. Here's the challenge for Boston with the lobs, though. Unlike CP3 in Lob City, where you're in the open court, see the point guard himself, CP3, is out there and he's lobbing at the Blake Griffin or DeAndre Jordan. In this case, you got a guy in Luka that puts you on his hip and he manipulates you and he can get into the lane. And as a result, you as a big man is conflicted because do you go and help? Do you drop back to make sure you protect against the lob? You don't know. And that split second that you're hesitant is when Luka makes his decision, and it's usually an effective one, okay? You can't, if you don't have anything to offset that, there's nothing you can do. Al Horford's not going to get it done for you at age 38 on that level. He's not going to do that for you. He might be able to make shots from three. Of course, you can't leave him open, so I'll give that. But you could also get somebody to guard him when he's away from the basket. One of those bigs would have to be the ones that come out and guard Porzingis. My issue and my hesitancy about Boston in this series is because when you talk to anybody who's talked about Porzingis' injury, they say it's similar to what Kevin Durant suffered before coming back on the court in the finals and ultimately tearing his Achilles and going in the finals against Toronto. That's what they point to. They also point to this. They said even when healthy, Porzingis wasn't a lateral mover. That's not his thing. That's not his strength. And so Boston is susceptible to pick and rolls all day, every day. They bring this kind of stuff up. How do you offset that? More offense, more offensive firepower, and shot blocking ability on the defensive side of the ball as well. That's what you have to do. Without Porzingis, you don't have those weapons. And I'll tell you something like that. This wouldn't even be a series if the Boston Celtics had a healthy Porzingis and managed to keep Marcus Smart. Because that brother right there is somebody we don't mention enough. I understand that Porzingis is an upgrade because he's 7'3" instead of 6'3", and I get it. But make no mistake about it. The heart and soul of that team in terms of their blood and guts was about Marcus Smart. And now that you don't have that in a series like this, that even raises the stakes even more on the need, Doggy, for Porzingis.
Well, if they had Marcus Smart, they wouldn't have Holiday.
They wouldn't have Porzingis. They traded him.
They wouldn't have Porzingis.
But they wouldn't have Holiday either if they had Smart because they wouldn't need another guard.
That's true.
So they wouldn't have had either. So if you're asking me who's a better player, Holiday or Smart, Holiday's a better player than Smart.
Well, you say I'm saying, but I understand. I'm not questioning that Holiday's a better player. I'm talking about what Boston needs in a series like this: the defensive tenacity, hardcore play, get up in you, grinding, that whole stuff. We know what Holiday's ability brings to you. But that it factor is required against the likes of Kyrie and Luka. That's required. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to offset it with supreme talent. You need Porzingis to do that.
Now remember, the guy in front of us here, the wonderful
Stephen
Smith, Stephen A. When they beat
Big Steve.
Denver in Game 1, he had Minnesota winning an NBA championship.
I did.
He was a little prisoner of the moment. He got excited.
And when Oklahoma City won, he was discussing how much he was going to enjoy.
So you ain't been wrong about none of these.
Thunder T-Wolves.
Yeah.
Once you get the T-Wolves wrong, and you did,
so
you can't jump on the team that beat them. And you are jumping on Dallas right now. That's not the right thing to do.
Let him
do that.
Let him take Dallas. You want to know why? Because I'm taking the Celtics.
I'm just analyzing the series.
Celtics.
And I haven't made a pick yet.
Book it.
We don't know about the health of Porzingis yet. That's what we're talking about.
You're not going to know. What do you mean not make a pick? You're not going to know until Game 1.
I will before Game 1. I haven't made my decision yet.
You
know
can
what I'm
wait
saying?
because
Haven't
NBA
made my
countdown.
decision
But
yet.
I'd like to get my pick on the
That's right.
record. Everyone heard that?
I just heard it.
Okay,
I
I'm not going to try to get a purse or anything because I've already taken too much money from everybody. I just want the bragging
How
rights.
can we not hear Molly? I mean,
Speaking of picks,
yes.
what did I do in the conference final
What?
with the
Lord.
big guy in Rapid?
Oh Lord.
Dallas plus 163 against Minnesota.
Wow.
And that was not for $100.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
Must
Dallas,
be nice.
Yes.
Hey, I'll leave you with this. Oh, go
Dallas
ahead.
has favorable odds in the finals.
They do. I think it's about the same. Isn't it? Like 163?
It's the first time an Eastern Conference team has been favored in the final since the Heat in 2013.
Wait,
Wow, that's a good
it
stat.
gets even. I'll make it even better for you. Only the third team this century in the East to
From
be
the
favored.
East, really?
The third team this
Well, yeah,
century.
go- yeah,
That's
a lot
how
of-
dominant the West is.
Yes,
then.
wow, that's a good job on your
It's
part.
very hard to bet on an underdog from the Western Conference. I'm just going to tell you that.
It's hard. Do I go back to Dallas again? But I don't want to be like him because I sat here and so did Molly, and he was waxing poetic. The greatest defense I've ever seen.
he was
Michael Jordan. There's a lot of There's a lot of MJ references.
Their defense in the first half of Game 2 and the second half of Game 7 is some of the best defense I've seen played in 30 years.
He was not alone in
Sip your
saying.
tea. You're from the islands. We know. You got a little milk and honey.
Hey, an island man, yeah, I know.